Well, how are you today? Hope things are going well. Now, I have for you that scientific test that was conducted in response to some internet myths that exist out there. People trying to explain things, I think it's just better if you see them in action. Now, this test rig is highly complicated, but stick around.
Well, hello everyone, can you see me? All right, I'm back here in the back. Now we're going to conduct a highly professional test. Please do not try this at home unless, of course, you have at least an electrical engineering degree, maybe a mechanical engineering degree. We'll even take some chemicals in there if it's from a reputable school. But you really need to have the proper background to set up such a dangerous test as this. Now we're going to look at how this responds in regards to the internet myth, this habit we have of content providers just listening to somebody else who gives their opinion and repeat. It's monkey see, monkey do, monkey tell. All right, so it's just a lot of it's nonsense when we deal with vane axial fans. They're very low pressure. When you have an air conditioner, something with ductwork, your car, any of this kind of stuff, what type of fan do you normally have? It'll normally be a squirrel cage or some type of centripetal fan because that can build pressure. Vane axial fans don't do that. They're very low pressure. So it's almost impossible to build positive pressure inside a computer case because they leak everywhere. Now we've looked at this case earlier. Now we're going to watch the test. Are you ready? Now this is a very scientific test. We're going to kick on Cinebench 2024, and I want you to watch the calibrated paper. Watch the one on top, watch the little strips at the back, watch underneath the exhaust ports by the underneath the graphics card, and on top of it, it's already warmed up a little bit. Let's kick it on. Tell me what you see. Do you not see the page rising on top of the computer? Do you not see the little pieces of paper go out? That's because these are supposed to be like 95 CFM fans from thermal tape. The problem is that's if they're sitting in free air, they generate that much air. When they've got pressure, that volume falls off dramatically. Now the fan we saw in the back of this, the exhaust fan, is fixed speed 12 volt DC. That's it. It moves air at the beginning when we don't have any intake. It's exhausting a little bit, but after that it becomes an impediment to exhaust because it's spinning and it's trying to keep its own speed. It actually causes more air to have to be bled off through other means. So when somebody is talking to you about, well, you want tight, so it, your direction of dust and whatnot, that's a bunch of, for the most part, nonsense if you're talking about vane axial fans.
All right, let me try it this way. If you have a 4.5 inch hole in a piece of plexiglass, then you have 4 inches of opening. What happens when you put a fan in there? You have less than 4 inches of opening. Now, if I have a fan in imagine this, a 1 cubic foot box of plexiglass, and I have one hole and one fan. How much air is going to be pushed? Well, we may push a little bit of air in there right up until we hit, say, 2 millimeters of water pressure inside, which is essentially nothing. So you put this on the outside of the box, and how many cubic feet is it going to push? Now assume that's 100 CFM potential at free air. Like if I just have it out here in the open and it can move, say, 100 cubic feet. How many cubic feet is it going to move in a closed box? It's going to move virtually none. It's going to push a little bit until it hits that cutoff pressure of 2 millimeters of water, and then it's going to stop. There's not going to be any airflow. Now what happens if we cut a hole in the opposite side? Then that's going to let a little bit of air out, but it's still going to be a restriction. It's still going to be back pressure on this fan, and it's going to push until it hits what? 2 millimeters of water, which is essentially nothing. And so it's going to move a little bit of air out there. Now let's take another fan and put it on that side of the box, okay? Now when it's on that side of the box, I've got sort of an anti-hole because it's trying to pull air out, and we've got one on this side. But now let's assume this is only, say, 20 CFM on the exhaust side, and we have 100 CFM on the intake side. How much is going through that box? A little bit more than what this fan on the outside on the exhaust can push, because it's at certain speeds, that's all it's going to turn. It's not going to turn anymore, and at that point any air that's trying to push around it sees it as a reduced opening for the air to get out. Now what we end up having, people talk about positive and negative and dust and all this nonsense. 2 millimeters of water, say we have the same pressure on the same fans and the same cutoff point, then the most it will ever pull out from your exhaust fans is until that set of exhaust fans sees that 2 millimeters of water. And then they're not going to pull anymore, because then all it's going to do, the faster you turn it, it's just going to be making noise. It's not going to be really moving any air, because it's not going to move it past the 2 millimeters of water. So if you have zero pressure and you have them perfectly balanced, they may work in full unison to pull more air, because this one isn't being cut off and that one isn't being cut off, and so they can push, and we get a lot of exchange of air inside of the box. In the PC I'm showing you, the desk PC, the studio PC, it has two 97 CFM 120 millimeter, 140 millimeters fans, okay? If I only have a 120 on the outside, a fixed blade, I can push around that a little bit, because it still sees it as an opening, but it sees it as a restricted opening. So I'm only going to push until these fans on the intake side see their cutoff pressure. Then they're going to quit pushing. After that, they're just making noise too. So what we end up having, if we have too much of an imbalance, is we can only go as negative inside of the box as 2 millimeters, and we can only go as high as 2 millimeters on the positive. So that's how that works. You're not going to get a full airflow of each of those rated devices. They're not going to work unless, of course, you can keep them perfectly balanced, or so almost perfectly balanced, so that they don't look like a restriction to either the intake or the exhaust. Does that make sense to you?
Why does your air filter stop the dust? Because dust sticks to whatever it runs into, just like a moth hitting the front windscreen of your car. When does mine go through its tail? When it hits the windshield. When does a piece of dust stick to a filter or to your computer? When it rams into something. So the higher velocity, the more air, the more likely you're going to hit. But it can maybe leak going this way. If we had too much negative pressure, it would suck dirt, dust on top of the computer and underneath the computer and to the front of the computer, because the airflow is directed toward the back. Have we seen enough? I'm going to go ahead and cut it off.
Well, in conclusion, in my humble opinion, box pressure has nothing whatsoever to do with dust accumulation. That's the bug hitting the windshield. What it does have to do with is your operational point on your PWM fan curves as they relate to the product's fan curves and the ratio between them. You're trying in an ideal world to hit a 0 box pressure, not plus or minus, because that just leads to noise. If you want to minimize dust accumulation, don't run the fans any higher than you need to maintain proper temperatures. That's it. Hope you enjoyed it. See you later. If you like this content, please go to calldeltosell.com, find the tab that says on YouTube, click it, and it'll open up a page of QR codes. There you can use a smartphone to scan and get to the YouTube page, or you can just mouse over and click it on a PC. There you'll be able to subscribe to this little button over here and click the notification bell so that YouTube will notify you. Thank you.